Chicago White Sox fans, welcome to Southside Sox Podcast, Mothership Podcast number 130. 130 these, 30 of these, can you believe it? Soxivus carries on. We have definitely entered the second half of the Soxivus celebration. Once again, sweatered, properly attired. Father Soxivus joins once again. Tommy Barbee, thank you. You had me worried there for a second. I thought that the Soxivus signal in the sky was not being seen because there's clouds over the Carolinas, but
I'm here.
Thank you. Thank God. Now we can start. Well, we were just BSing about sweaters and stuff until you showed up. So, hey, we're mostly sweatered here. Don't know why. It's just a thing. Blame Allie Wesel. We are talking this time around. We reversed from last year, 93 win season. You start off with good games, 81 and 81 season in the middle of a contention. Can't say it without laughing now. Contention window merits that you start off with bad games, which was last week. And now today we're going to be talking about the best games of the season, our favorite games of the season, whatnot. I have no notes, so I'm going to be stumbling around a little bit in navigating this, but I do know we are starting off with Dante Jones, cleverly took leadoff position for a pretty meaningful, pretty super cool reason. So please, Dante, take it away with your favorite game or the best game for you of 2022.
All right, so my game was April 15th. It was Jackie Robinson Day. It was White Sox versus Rays. Dylan ceased start. Dylan had 5 2/3 innings, gave up 1 run on 3 hits. And he, it was a great game for him. And just the meaning of a Jackie Robinson Day game is the first one I attended myself. And as an African-American baseball fan, Jackie is a very important part of like my fandom and why I'm here. And also, the White Sox have had a history of African-American and Afro-Latino players over the years, pretty heavy history of it. So it was just great to see. Plus, the Sox won and beat a team that ended up going to the playoffs, unlike them.
And I'm guessing it was a short list for you to be able to finally get to a game. It doesn't always fall in Chicago. Obviously, probably roughly half the time it's not falling in Chicago for you to be able to conveniently see it. But I'm guessing that is a short list, want list type of thing for you to be able to finally hit.
Yeah, like my list is, so I've got Jackie Robinson Day crossed off. I would have done 4th of July this year, but after the whole, Highland Park incident, shooting, right, I did not want to go to a baseball game. It felt like they should have canceled it, but that was my opinion. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was the April 15th Jackie Robinson Day game was my first game of the season. It was a good one. The vibes were high. Game made the White Sox 5-2, and we thought we was all on cloud 9. We thought we was gonna live up to the hype. We was thinking that we might not regret the Fresh Prince meme, but oh boy, did we regret it.
Let me throw this out here. It's sort of on topic, I suppose. We probably brought it up, I want to say maybe 2 years ago. I don't know. I've been banging this drum here and there. I've always thought, not that it's necessarily connected. I'm sorry if this is not even the appropriate way to thematically connect these. But to me, it seems to me, especially in Chicago with the Negro League's legacy, as there is a legacy in many cities that also now have MLB teams or still have MLB teams, that it might be nice to every Juneteenth, it would be a really great way to tribute what the Negro Leagues meant to baseball, especially now they're recognized as a major league, and especially the rich heritage that the White Sox, Comiskey Park, connecting to the Negro Leagues, Minnie Minoso and a number of other players, Larry Doby, playing as early stars with the White Sox when they finally made it to the major leagues. It seems like it's a natural fit. I don't know if it's anything that's ever going to catch fire. It seems like it would be a really nice way, whether or not you hooked it in with a Juneteenth or not, to just be able to every year, at least, as long as we're wearing 1983 uniforms every Sunday, how about just one game a year, perhaps honoring the Negro Leagues, as has happened before. Those have been throwbacks many, many times, but rather than just a sort of a crass marketing thing, how about something that's actually meaningful every year?
And the best part is that the throwbacks from the Negro League, Chicago American Giants ones, they're beautiful.
I got one.
Great jersey. And I can't find them online as often as I want. So just give me one of those with Tim Anderson, like with Anderson on the back of them. I'll be happy.
Other thoughts, as long as we're on the subject, I think that might be a decent idea for Major League Baseball to try and do. I know it's not always going to fit every city. It's not going to fit maybe even every year. I don't know. I mean, you don't want to necessarily do some like that weird stuff where the Rays like pretend they were a team in the 1970s. So they do those kooky flow throwbacks as if they were around in 1978. But for the teams where it fits, it seems like it might be a really nice way to acknowledge something rather than just have the Negro Leagues acknowledged as Major League, and then we just never think of them again, which is sort of what it seems like might end up happening.
Yeah, I love that idea. And in some ways it makes sense, but in other ways I find it ironic that the Kansas City Royals are actually really good about promoting the Negro Leagues and have that as part of their kind of visiting team package. A lot of times when visiting teams come to the Kansas City Royals ballpark, they'll have it set up for them to visit the Negro League Museum, which I think is a really cool concept too. I hope it happens. I think the thing I wish baseball would do first is retire Roberto Clemente's number across Major League Baseball and give the same type of treatment that they do for Jackie Robinson Day. I think that when you consider the impact that he had for Latin Americans, playing baseball now, and just from a humanitarian standpoint, he really touched the game in a way that very few others have. And to me, it just seems every bit of a no-brainer is having Jackie Robinson Day.
Tommy, let's count it as one of the losses of the season. That's last week's podcast. Sorry, but another loss was, if you recall, some of us were on the staff Slack when I had somehow seen, or maybe somebody else did, I don't know, that is actually going to happen. Somebody put that report out there that they really were going to, and it was going to be a Pittsburgh game. It was on what would be the Clemente Day. And that turned out just to be a false report. So another setback for the season, because I know within our staff, everyone was like, great idea, about time. We're so happy this is happening. And then of course, like an hour later, we find out, oh no, it actually
was too good of an idea. Exactly. So yeah,
Major League Baseball did the right
said
thing.
No.
Manfred can only have one good idea and do one good thing every 10 years.
Exactly.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, I think I have a back-to-back here. I'll try not to talk too long because the next two games come perhaps under my purview. Certainly my game is next. Hampshire comes up after that, so I'll try to summarize both wins, believe it or not. Didn't choose a loss for best game. My best game, I've alluded to this, I think a week ago in the sort of bad podcast where the White Sox actually were the best team in baseball at one point at 6-2. My game falls on, I think the day after Dante's. It's a Rays game. They improved to 6-2, best in baseball. It was their most of all the clutch wins. I threw something again within staff. Basically, all the White Sox clutch games this year, their most clutch games, they lost almost all of them. This was the most clutch, most tense game they played the season that they actually won. This is Rays very early in the season, but that's just how leverage works. This ensured them winning their third straight series for this to open the season. This is the highest or the furthest they were in first place all year, which is 2 games. At 6-2 at the start of the season. Best record in baseball at that moment. Michael Kopech. Tommy, Michael Kopech, 1 hit over 5 innings, no earned runs. But of course, Ronaldo Lopez still adjusting to the LASIK, blew that save, did vulture the win. Bennett Souza gets the save. And let's see, winning, a manufactured run, 6th inning. Luis Robert gets on air, steals second base, advances to third on a flyout, and then Yasmani Grandal, all these weird names, doing good things, singled him in. And that turned out to be the winning run. And we talked, I guess, a week ago about, how this season started. And Malachi, at least, was one guy who said, I saw through it and I wasn't really feeling the start of the season again. Let's revisit that. White Sox get off, winning 6 of 8, winning all 3 series. Detroit, okay, so what? It seemed like Detroit was going to be a formidable opponent. Turned out not to be the case, but they certainly had some hype. Then you're playing, I don't know who's next. They played, certainly the Rays. They played legitimate teams. They were beating them.
In between, they played
Seattle. They played Seattle, right? Took out a 2 or 3 from Seattle. So, everything was according to plan, even if maybe it seemed like it was on shaky foundation. Hey, the results were the results. And even in this win here, your manufacturing run, which White Sox, since Ozzie Ball, which wasn't even manufacturing runs, But Luis Robert did what Luis Robert was supposed to do. Gets on an error, doesn't hit the ball over the fence, steals second, gets a third on a sack, and then scores on probably what was just a CNI ground ball from Yasmani Grandal. This is the way the season was supposed to be playing out. At this point, we're early in the year. Of course, we're still all flushed with optimism. Were there really cracks you're seeing, or was this, according to plan, and the White Sox might actually fulfill that strange fresh prince in the empty room photograph, ill-advised? But hey, if they had backed it, we wouldn't be talking about it.
I mean, we were all talking about it when it came out, to be honest. We're all like, this is a bad idea, and this is going to karmically bite us in the ass.
Yeah.
But at the time, to quote I'm not even gonna figure out who I'm gonna quote here, but everything was looking at Millhouse at that point. But as with Millhouse, the bad things always happen.
Yeah. Other vibes? Yeah, go ahead, Tommy.
No, I was just going to say the White Sox are not in a position. We're never in a position to post a meme like that. So I mean, it's asking for trouble. It's not even at the level of like superstition saying, "Oh, this kicker's never missed a field goal." It was just a bad idea going into the season, and we all knew that was just going to be something that was thrown in our face, and Cleveland definitely did that, as we all know.
And they remember,
because when you go to for the first time in your long history, you go to playoffs 2 straight seasons. First time they've ever gone to the playoffs 2 straight seasons, and they say, "Well, I guess we are the ones that run the division now." And it's like, no, you have to earn that. Like even the damn Cubs, were able to put years of sustained success together. Meanwhile, the last time the White Sox won a World Series was 2005. They then missed the playoffs until 2008, and then missed the playoffs again until 2020 in a 60-game season.
I
also think at that point, it was already clear that there were holes in the lineup, whether or not you go 6-2, it was already pretty clear to me that our starting pitching wasn't going to be sustainable. And we're plugging in random rookies that were having good luck, right out the gate, like Bennett Sousa. And there was another rookie that
Tanner Banks, certainly, where we're coming from.
Yep.
I think at that point, we saw some of all of the cylinders rolling, but I could kind of that loss to Detroit on opening day. I was baffled by that. I think there were signs that maybe there were some cracks, and I was hoping that maybe it would get fixed at the deadline or throughout the season with a trade or two, but obviously Rick Hahn doesn't like to deliver. So
I remember saying at the time of the podcast, because we were bewildered by the start and the fact that the offense was what was propelling this so far, despite whether there were holes. And obviously we know second base didn't get filled, right field didn't get filled. Yasmani Grandal was about to have a historically bad turnaround season. But at the time I was like, okay, well, last year the starting pitchers carried the mail. And this year, maybe it is going to be the offense. Now, of course, that turned out to be quite a joke. But at the time, at the 8-game mark, it was like, wow, hey, what's going on here? Because they were thumping the ball. And really, as Allie referred, that very first opening day, that should have been a win. I can't count it, but they did everything they needed to earn the win. So at the time, I can remember thinking, I don't know, some of these thoughts we're having now, weren't coming up then. And that's probably because we were just wanting it to be so. We're wanting to be in the room, the empty room with no furniture, along with fresh prints. A dangerous proposition, we then later learned later in the summer. Hamsters game's up next, May 8th. White Sox improved to 14-13. It is the 5th game in the longest winning streak of the season, 5 games. It somewhat offset the longest losing streak of the season, which had happened maybe ended a week or so earlier. Perhaps Dallas Keuchel's best start here, but it was actually a legit start, I guess. Maybe it gave a couple fans hope, not me. Abreu 2-run double, which was the winning margin. Yeah, 5th straight win. White Sox 14-13, probably one of 24 times over the course of the season we said, okay, back over 500. Now will wake up like in a week and they'll be 6 over 500 and they'll be in first place. And we'll be looking back at the rest of the division all year. This was early enough that you could actually have thought that and people wouldn't have looked at you funny or that you've been maybe drinking the wrong things. So this was still early on. Did the White Sox putting together even a 5-game winning streak, which turned out to be the longest of the year, but to be able to sort of punch back after a losing streak that took them out of this sort of hot start or decent start they had, did putting together 5 games to sort of counter that, maybe at the about 30-game mark of the season, instill any confidence, or again, the same shakiness you saw at game 8, even more prevalent at game 27?
I don't remember this game, to be honest.
Everybody's audio went out at the same time. So that's a good excuse to move on from that lousy game the Hamster chose. And next we're going to move on to Jordan. This is the Tim Anderson fuck you game, as she put it. But I mean, this was terrific. And I really thought Joe was going to pick the other game of this doubleheader because I know he was super jazzed about it. This was a real punch in the mouth. White Sox take a doubleheader. One of the games nationally, this game, Jordan's game, I think national TV broadcast, just romped on what was a very hot team at the time and made you think, okay, White Sox can play with the big boys. Of course, found out that wasn't true, but at the time felt pretty good. Yes, Jordan?
They swept the fucking Yankees at Yankee Stadium. What more can you say? As much as it was the Tim Anderson saying "fuck you" to Josh Donaldson game for being a racist piece of shit. It's also just like Michael Kopech went like 5 2/3 no-hit innings or perfect innings, went 7 with 1 hit and 2 walks. It was a great fucking performance on Sunday Night Baseball. I was like, this is the team. This is a team. This series and that Astros series later in the year that I think someone's got a game in. Were the 2 series that were like, okay, this team is legit, and if we can make the playoffs, we can beat these teams because we've performed in some, I mean, not high pressure scenarios. It's the middle of May,
right.
But it's like they performed in May. Well, they performed against the Yankees and swept them in New York, where they took 1 game against the Yankees last year, and it was the Field of Dreams. Tim Anderson hates the fucking Yankees, I guess. And you know what? Good. Good.
Another game just back over 500, 21-20. So, I mean, we shouldn't even felt as confident as we were, but come on. Yeah. You win on that stage in that manner with that weird drama on the side where you've even got, really, let's face it, Tony La Russa sort of instigated the whole thing, and you've got sort of the team in him. I mean, this is probably the most they've ever like coalesced, as a unit, ever. Him showing, I don't know, he's got the team's back or he just wants to stir up trouble with the Yankees or whatever it was. Not bad at all. Joe, I got to hear from you about what you felt, because this has got to be sort of like your 1A game, even though you didn't choose something from this series.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was very exciting. I mean, just with the timing of how everything transpired. Obviously, Donaldson, not even his teammates really stood up for him during that whole incident, and I'm glad that they did not. And almost immediately after, the White Sox go into Yankee Stadium, and the Yankees were off to a flaming hot start to the season, and it did not matter on that particular day. I mean, it's certainly up to that point in the season, the best day of the season, as the White Sox not only won 2 games, but they did it against a team that looked almost unbeatable to open the season. Obviously the White Sox probably were going to win that game regardless at that point. But the Tim Anderson home run was just, the maybe the happiest I've ever felt about style points in a game that they were already about to win. I mean, I couldn't have really drawn it up much better than that one.
Yeah. And Melissa, as someone who's at the Field of Dreams game, sort of witnessed, via TV this year and in person last year, sort of these heroics that Tim Anderson put in. I imagine this is something you anticipate and expect, or at least really enjoyed seeing, because you just love killing the Yankees. And I think we really love seeing Tim Anderson kill the Yankees.
Yeah, of course. Anytime TA can get up there and smack one out, that's pretty exciting. And I also think it's really funny that Yankees fans really hate Josh Donaldson pretty much as everybody else does. So, yeah.
I don't think the league likes Josh Donaldson.
No.
Yeah.
No one does, because he's not Josh Donaldson of 2016. Therefore, he's not allowed to get away with the shit he used to get away with.
Well, it also speaks volumes when you've been on what, like 7 teams and
Exactly. Yeah.
like that.
So even when he was good, they didn't want to keep him more than a year.
Exactly.
Sell high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also just want to say too, this was one of 3 series I think the Yankees lost the entire first half. So like to do that, for the White Sox to do that was just incredible. Like, yeah, so pretty impressive.
And while we're okay, we can all pile on Josh Donaldson here, and believe me, I encourage that type of behavior. Let's not forget that the tribalism of Yankees fans still did show its head. I'd like to think if the roles were reversed, White Sox fans would know to say, cannot support it. But you got a fair amount of that fan base still, looking. I mean, it was not a pretty episode.
They have John Boy, we have Ken Woe, we all have shitheads in our fan bases. Also, Barstool Dave, because fuck him too.
You just exalted Kenwo. You just raised Kenwo's status. Oh my God, I hope he does not listen to this. Kenwo, all right, I'm deleting it. Your voice is going to drop out for a second, Dante. We just can't do that for former Southside Sox member Kenwo. Oh God, it hurts to say. Oh yeah, see, know your history. No, Kenwo wasn't always Kenwo. I mean, he was always Kenwo, but it was like, with a little asterisk, not with whatever the hell it is now. And anyway, this is a topic to move on. We don't need to examine more skeletons.
You don't want to do this
Southside
Sox.
It's Soxivus. It's Soxivus. Come on, let's celebrate. Okay, taking a different turn here. We're going to move on to Super Joseph Resis now, who picked it's still very heated, about as heated as it can get, maybe even more so than the Yankees. It's a Cubs game extra inning win. Give me the vibe, give me the justification of that selection, Joe, especially not choosing the Yankees, one of those Yankees games.
Yeah, I was surprised. I mean, there were actually a decent amount of good games to pick from this year. Yeah, so this was the last game of the season series against the Cubs. The White Sox entered with a 2-1 series lead, but really splitting against the Cubs would not have felt satisfying at all. Like, it would have just kind of felt like the inverse of the 2019 series, where the White Sox managed to win 2 out of the 4 games, but it felt like such a huge win at that point because of where the different franchises were at that time. And so I was really hoping that they would win this one, but they had a great outing from Dylan Cease that was only spoiled a little bit by a Jake Berger error, allowing 1 unearned run to score, and that was the only run until the bottom of the 9th inning. And David Robertson, former White Sox reliever, retired the first batter he faced, but then Gavin Sheets doubled, and so they had a little bit of hope. But Adam Engel came up to bat. He's not the strongest hitter by any means, but he got an accidental infield single on a check swing. So against all odds, like, it kind of felt like those first 45 games or so of the season, like the White Sox were almost going for broke at the roulette table, weren't really catching many breaks. But yeah, I thought that Adam Engel play, where he had that infield single that he didn't even mean to swing at, I thought that would be a major turning point, and they ended up getting that tying run in the bottom of the 9th on a wild pitch, and that was how they got that tying run across. And they went back and forth in extra innings, but the White Sox just would not go away in that one. Both teams scored 2 in the 10th and 1 in the 11th. And Jake Berger, who had that costly error earlier in the game, came through with the walk-off single in the 12th. So that was just a game with a ton of back and forths. In fact, There were 12 plays in this game that resulted in a win probability shift of 15 percentage points or more, which if a game even has 5 plays that shift the win probability that much, that means it's a very exciting game with a lot of back and forths. But this game had 12 of those, and so it was very intense. I know it was just the Cubs. They obviously were not a very good team in 2022. But that one felt very satisfying, and the White Sox, despite having their backs up against the wall a few times in that game, they managed to find a way to win, and that was something that we really hadn't seen much from them at that point in the season.
And yet, Joe, they had to scratch and claw to get to 500, I believe, with that win against the Chicago Cubs. I'm going to go ahead and say this is a signal 46 games in. We're having a scrape against the Cubs. We're still just 500 and we're getting close to June. Now the sweat starts to bead a little bit, and you got better than losing those games. But compared to just a year earlier when the White Sox pretty much just blew through the Cubs 5 out of 6 or whatever it was, this year was different. Let's pull it back a second, because going into next year's schedule, play every team in the National League. The Crosstown Series, I don't know if that means it has less meaning. Certainly stands out less. Where's everybody stand with games against the Cubs at this point? Some people say they don't even care at all. They hate them. Some people still consider those Cubs games, top rivalry, big time game. Where's everybody at with playing the Cubs? And ignore the fact that these days they might be likely to lose against them. Who knows? How are we feeling about crosstown games 2023 and on?
I think they used to be way more exciting before the Sox had won a World Series and the Cubs had won a World Series. Like, that was our big World Series to me. Like, I remember I used to get on as soon as tickets went on sale to try and get my opening day tickets, my Cubs Sox tickets. And the ballpark was so tense and electric when you went, either if you went on the north side or the south side. But after we won the World Series, I was like, who cares? And now that they've won one too, I just think it's just not relevant anymore. It's just not a big deal.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It also doesn't help that the MLB keeps scheduling these games for early May, late April on a Tuesday and a Wednesday. If you're gonna put some importance to a crosstown classic, schedule these games when it's warm out in Chicago and make them make it a primetime slot on a Saturday, Sunday, or a Friday, Saturday situation, even if you're going to make it a 2-game series. I also think doing the 2-game series is just stupid. Make it a 3-game series, make it a real series. I just think the MLB has been taking away from the actual importance of the crosstown and the fan experience, I think, too, of it.
As someone who was at this game, sorry, Dante, it was very hot, but also possibly because I had COVID at this game. I went to this game. I wanted to talk about this game itself real quick, but I think it's fine. I think they feel like big games, whatever. But yeah, no, I had COVID at this game. I went 9 innings and I was like, man, why am I so exhausted from watching 9 innings of a baseball game? And I got home, had COVID at the Cubs Sox game. 2 days after I watched Dallas, 3 days after I watched Dallas Keuchel ruin my birthday. It's a great weekend regardless.
Quite a run.
I got to meet all of the internet people that I'd never met before. That's true. It was a good time. But Cubs Sox series, I think they feel meaningful. It's whatever. Although, yeah, it's a little bit more meaningless when you play games against all of the National League, because it's when it's just the Cubs or the Cubs and a couple NL Central teams, it's okay, yeah, these are interesting games of teams you never get to see. But at this point, with the DH in the NL and playing every team, what's the point in separating leagues at this point, to be honest?
Yeah, and also I think I said this on my first pod here, because we were talking about Cubs Sox and how it's lost meaning for most people. And luckily that was funny enough, I had COVID that weekend because it was around my birthday weekend. And it's just Cubs Sox at least exist. But also the series, like everybody said, it has less meaning. It shouldn't be a 2 games here and 2 games there. They're just gonna do that. They should do it all back and forth. 2 like Thursday, Friday at one, Saturday, Sunday at the other, or just make it a 3-game series in like the middle of June, or like a 4th of July thing or something like that.
Okay, we have identified the full hospital role for Southside Sox or Southside Sox writers to be. We made that very clear over the course of these best and worst games over the course of the season. Thankfully, everybody's alive and well, and hopefully not going to be catching any sort of pandemic-related disease in 2023 in Chicago or elsewhere. We're going to cut at All-Star break again. We've had many detours already. Apologies for that. Malachi's game is a Toronto walk-off and I think extras. Got the team up to 33 and 33. And what do you say here? He just wants it to be known that it was just sort of like a breath of fresh air to get back to 500, which is a terrible theme and is a recurring theme. You know, I'll just say I picked a game where the team was 6-2. Everybody else is like game under, game over, 500. But that's because the whole season was. And I suppose at the time for Malachi, it was like, okay, maybe this is a sign of an upswing. White Sox have resilience, like Joe's game, fighting back against whatever opponent. And good things are coming. Well, they didn't turn out to be coming, but then that's a spoiler alert. So again, a reminder before we go to break, a reminder that if you have not seen how this season ends, pause at an appropriate spot. If you've only gotten through June, then I'm sorry, you can't listen to the second half of this podcast. If you've gotten through August into September, it's really scary. I can tease you with that. It gets really scary and sort of ugly. But again, just know when to stop. And again, a cap tip to Jordan Haas for bringing that up last podcast, because hey, not everybody knows. We're going to take a break, come back, talk about some other games, including some folks here who are going to represent their games, and we may acknowledge others who decided not to show up, maybe because they didn't have a sweater vest. All right, whatever. We will identify a sweater vest when we come back out of the break for the second half. Stick with us. Second half of a very exciting Chicago White Sox season upcoming. Everything in. Hey there, White Sox fans. Guess what? It is second half of the season. We are entering Soxivus celebration best games of the season. We are now in the second half of 2022. We may detour at any time to just discuss all our different sweaters and sweater vests. It's the sweater vest edition of Soxivus. We didn't know it was going to happen. A year ago, we were costumed. We did that a little bit this year. I'd say the best, the most participation we've had on the podcast now is in sweaters and sweater vests. Go figure. Talk to the guy who's sitting in 80 degrees wearing a sweater vest right now for an hour-long podcast. All right, moving on. Coming out of the break, Brian O'Neill chose a game against Houston. White Sox swept, did really well against Houston, including the game that we referred to a week ago, where a fan from behind home plate told Tony to send in Adam Engel as a pinch runner, and Tony snapped out of whatever stupor he was in and did so, leading to a victory for the Chicago White Sox. But be sure to read Brian's write-up. I'm sure it will be eloquent and silly, and we'll use a word that you'll have to look up to understand. So we will scoot right to sell the team. It's Melissa Sage-Bollenbach, her game. Hey, go figure. Not exactly a stirring victory and a bunch of excitement, but something notable because, well, I mean, it's a sentiment we feel, and we cross our fingers hoping it may happen. Melissa, tell me about that game.
Yes, so it's a loss, but there were still a lot of really exciting things I thought that happened at the game. I mean, the team collapsed and it was a horrible game. I mean, they lost 10-5. Davis Martin gave up a bunch of runs. Carlos Perez had in his debut had like a catcher's interference and passed ball, and so it was just typical 2022 White Sox baseball. But the fun things that were there is like I got free stuff. So look at this cool, I mean, you can't see it if you're not watching it, but I did get a really cool 80s fanny pack. Nice. And also a really cool White Sox hat. So, that kind of made my day. I went with my son and we got in the Jumbotron. So that was exciting. But the highlight was I think the Sox were down 6-3, and I'm on my phone screaming on Twitter, which is what I do. And I get really mad at White Sox baseball. And he is like, Mom, look out there. And he points, and there's this huge sign with a guy wearing a Fire Tony La Russa t-shirt that said "Sell the team." And it wasn't like a homemade crappy banner. Like somebody actually went out and went to like, you know, the nice fancy printer place and got this massive sign printed off. And then it slowly through the rest of the game, as the White Sox are continuing to suck, made its way to like the third base side of home plate. And then all of a sudden the security guard just came down and like, and confiscated it. So I didn't tape the game, so I don't know if it ever really made it on TV. So I don't know if any of our fellow podcasters here watched it to see if it did. But yeah, I mean, to me, it was just like, the front office is going to see this. Like you can't not see this because it was a pretty significant deal at the game. And so, yeah, so that was my best game.
Yeah, the memories of that. I mean, you can't avoid it. I mean, of course, then the photo services are scrambling to get a shot, whether above the dugout or in the outfield. We ran, I believe, your shot, Melissa, as our lead art because we had to. You got to acknowledge that. So yeah, definitely the front office noticed. And in fact, knowing that sign was so well made, and knowing Rick Hahn's devilish, cheeky little smile, even though he hired the guy, who knows? That could have been a Hahn funded sign.
It was
controversy started.
Yep.
Controversy started at the Southside Soxivus podcast, but who knows? It was a legit sign. That was not a homemade. If I had made it, you would have been able to read it. So that was legit. Other memories of that game, anybody else pop up when you're just like, oh my gosh? I mean, it's not necessarily jaw dropping because we'd already heard Fire Tony, but that's taken in another step. And the fact that it wasn't immediately burned by, I don't know, security. Interesting.
I don't know if it made the telecast, but I do remember seeing video footage of it. So I think at least a fair number of people caught on to it happening, not just in the crowd, but maybe it was the ancillary like video services that it was being broadcasted on. It was circulating throughout Twitter, which I thought was kind of amusing.
Yeah.
The fact that it made its way around the stadium is just a testament to the fact that White Sox fans want Jerry to sell this fucking team. Like to be able to just pass it around the stadium to where people will hold it up. It's like, yeah, no, that is the epitome of what really needs to happen with this team.
And how they must have got it in the stadium is the other thing,
Exactly.
like as a female, like I can't take anything bigger than like an index card, purse wise into the game, but somehow they got this giant banner rolled up. I don't know if somebody was like on the side with I don't know, feeding it through the fence or whatever.
You wrap it around two people and then they walk in together.
Or it's just the male-female fan double standard, Yeah, sure, get in there. I've seen bigger beer bellies, so come on in, sir. All right, quick. We've only got Allie and Tommy to talk about their games, and we could squeeze them if we wanted to. Come on, just Father Soxivus and Super Trooper Allie. So, okay, quick sidebar. Has anybody made a sign that's gotten on television? I will start. I was in Kansas City. We made a homemade sign, my friend and I. That said, because we had limited resources, we were on the floor of the gift shop scrawling it on a borrowed Sharpie. This is in the 90s. Hey Wimpy, we have food. We thought that would get us on TV. It was actually a national broadcast. We did get on TV, and Tom Paciorek insulted our sign. He didn't hand it because he said, "Where's the food?" We said we had food and we didn't have food. We just wanted to get on. Anyway, sort of a bad story. Anyhow, anybody else have a more exciting story about getting a sign on a broadcast or?
I just want to make sure everyone knows who Tom Paciorek is, correct? I have to
We're
ask.
not that old. We're not.
Okay,
that
see, Allie doesn't know, and that's why.
23 years
Words
old.
mean nothing to me.
Yeah.
The name sounds
Allie.
familiar, so I'm just like, I kind of know. I'm gonna say maybe.
I just saw the faces that everyone was making, and I was like, I think we've reached a divide on who knows who Tom Paciorek is.
Well, if you can think of a time, imagine if you can think of a time where Hawk Harrelson was a good broadcaster. I know it's impossible for some, and it's sort of impossible for me. And I lived through his better broadcasting days. That was a combination that made sense. People seem to like him and Don Drysdale. They're all right. Him and Wimpy, the amount they brought into the game from their playing days did not become obnoxious or a school marmy the way Harrelson got with Steve Stone. They were a lot of fun. Tom Short played for the 1983 White Sox, played for the White Sox for a while. Actually was a pretty darn good player. A lot of crazy stories having to do with him. Very self-deprecating. Don't always hear that a lot. Steve Stone will not self-deprecate. Well, I guess he does in a way that's like allowed. It's a whole different broadcasting scene these days.
Saying stay on the ride or just enjoy the ride is self-deprecate on its own.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, unintentionally self-deprecating. Anyhow, it's an entirely different podcast. The Wimpy Pachoric podcast. One day that'll be number 385, which I will not be around for. Anyhow, okay, that sidebar didn't work. But if you want to jump in with your assigned story one day,
okay.
No,
I actually don't have a science story. I
Okay.
just used to like run the Jumbotron at college hockey games. So
Okay.
I just, I've seen some signs, let me tell you.
I bet. Memo to Jordan, do not show that on the big screen next time. Yeah. Okay. Well, Lee's up next 4 days later, I believe, from Melissa's game, end of August. At this point, we have largely given up hope, because Lee's game is Tony La Russa being gone. It's just I think they won the game, but it's like, hey, he's gone and we're happy. That's pretty much what the last month of the season was reduced to. So we'll move on from that. Read on that. Lee, I'm sure we'll have a good write up here. Allie Wesel. Oh, it's a birthday. It's entirely different birthday story than Jordan Haas a week ago. Allie, it was your birthday. You came home. We waited up to do a podcast, a post-game podcast, just a flurry of wonderful memories. Dylan Cease one-hitter on your birthday. Pretty cool.
Yeah, it was very, very cool. Also, I met like a ton of White Sox Twitter people that day. I saw Jordan and Jackie and a whole slew of people. So that was really special. But yeah, the whole weekend was special just in general. Like I got to spend my birthday weekend in Chicago with some of my best girlfriends. So that was really nice. But then the fact that like we went to the game not really expecting anything, like the Friday night game that we went to was that weird double walk-off situation. So I like did not know what to expect. Dylan Cease is coming off of an 8-inning outing against the Arizona Diamondbacks, which I think was his longest outing of his career to date before his complete game shutout. So yeah, I think we knew that his outing was special, probably in the third or the fourth inning, like he was definitely dealing. Did I know that was going to end with 8.2 innings of hitless baseball? Probably not. Yeah, it was just, and on top of it, like Eloy Jimenez hit a home run, Romy Gonzalez had his first career home run, and Elvis Andrus hit a grand slam off of a position player. So like that was really fun. Yeah, the offense was there. Dylan just did what Dylan did all season. So yeah, it was very special. Also, shout out to Trevor McGill for not giving me a ball from the bullpen on my birthday, because he didn't believe it was my birthday, but that's fine.
Not bitter.
Damn.
That's not cool. Who walks around saying it's their birthday? That's at their birthday. Is that a thing?
Right? That's
what I'm
really
saying.
weird.
And on top of it, he said he didn't have any balls, and I was clearly looking at the ball bag on the ground. So
It's just the fact that you made him say that out loud. Yeah, I was like, you made him say that.
Great.
That's pretty funny.
No balls.
Don't
Trevor
have any
McGill.
balls. I'm sorry.
And then got to come home and do a podcast, which clearly probably was the highlight of the evening, Allie. But you can be honest.
Yeah, I think that was probably my second podcast I had done with Southside Sox. Like I was very new to Southside Sox when that happened. So pretty great entrance, I guess.
And now, Allie, you're setting the fashion trends for the entire podcast. Allie says sweater vest, and everybody's like, well, okay, I better find a sweater vest. Everybody's showing up late. Dante's overheating. It's rough, but we're gonna get through this. We're gonna muscle through because we've only got a month left in the season. Let's talk a second though about how weird it was to have that blowout game as a no-hitter. That's got to be weird. And I know Dylan was asked about it because he had definitely some layups. I think really late in that game. Wasn't like the eighth inning, like a seventh or eighth inning, a huge inning for the White Sox. So it's like, geez, you're just sitting there, you're waiting. It's obviously in his head by then. It's not the third inning. A very strange circumstance. It certainly doesn't lead to him, giving up the hit on the last out of the game. But different. I haven't done any no-hitter studies, but I'm guessing the games are usually a bit closer than that because let's face it, 10-0 games or whatever are rare as they are. So that was probably strange. Too gave the crowd, I imagine, a lot of time to sort of buzz about it as well.
Yeah, like, so I was on my way home, funny enough, from work, like when this game was going, and I'm just like, I thought about halfway because I was like, it was right the third inning. I was like, maybe I should get a ticket, go see what's going on,
Damn it.
BS around. And I was like, nah, I'm tired. I want to go home. I don't want to see these losers. And then I get
Can't blame
home, I
you.
watched the entire game with my grandma and my dad. And I'm just like, I could have been there, but also like, did I really want to be there when the no-hitter was lost? And just like be like, another White Sox
Yep.
blow.
Yep. I'll give you a similar story. I missed a Nolan Ryan no-hitter. I went to school in Texas. I don't know what I was thinking, but because the friend I was going to go with, we planned on going, we had plans much earlier, and he's like, oh, I think Nolan Ryan's pitching. It's always so crowded when he pitches. Let's not go. I was like, okay, fine, no big deal. So blew that. However, okay, show of hands now. And again, the oldest of us here have a better chance at this. Anyone witness at any level, no hitter in the majors or whatnot? I did see both of Burleys. I was there for both of those games. Anybody else ever caught a no hitter, or even a near no hitter like Allie did?
I missed Rodon's by one, or not Rodon's, Burley's by one day. I was there the other day.
I missed an almost no hitter by Herman Marquez last year by like a day, but it was also I almost missed an almost no hitter, but I was also at the game with Allie. Well, not with Allie, but I was at the game and Allie was also there. And that was a fun time. Me and Jackie were like shaking in the ninth inning. We're like standing next to each other like, is he gonna do this? And now I hate Luis Arias for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it's sort of it's hey, those are the rules. Just like you gotta hate this McGill guy because he's like, oh yeah, no baseballs, staring down at a bag of baseballs.
Yeah, kind of like the whole Rodon toe ball, where it's just like it was so close to being even better than was, but like just give me that little inch. That's all we wanted.
Yeah,
and the baseball guys could not shine upon.
Yeah, the Rodon no hitter, I believe Keelan from Southside Sox was there. I think also with Brief Saves Tuesday. I think they were there together. I'm pretty sure Keelan saw it. I don't know.
Malachi was there for the perfect game for Burley.
Young little Malachi. Yeah, it's like we were together our entire lives. It's just I was like 30 and he was 10 and we didn't know each other. But it's like we have quite a scrapbook of memories together. We'll have to actually meet one day. Okay. Oh yeah. Hey, this arm threw a no hitter. So okay, just was it professional? Hey, let's move on. Okay, Tommy, you've got a game coming up now against the A's, and your tag for this is like, we thought they were gonna like you actually thought they were gonna like put it together. This was going to happen.
No, I didn't. But I mean, this was as good as it got for the White Sox, right, because this was before the car completely drove off the cliff, burst into flames, and then blew up. Like, I mean, this they were only one game behind. They ended up being 1.5 games behind. They were 72-68. It was like, all right, even just being halfway mediocre, like they're still right there in the Central. It was a good pitching performance by Lance Lynn. They had scored 14 runs earlier in the series against Oakland. Then he had a 10-run game. And it was like, hey, offense. I remember this. I remember the White Sox hitting. Elvis Andrus had lit a fire into the ball club and did really well in his short stint with the Sox. And it was like as close to a good vibe as you could get from this White Sox team, like I said, before all hell broke loose.
And that's legit. It had been a month. It had been August 16th since they were as close to first place. So, I mean, you're not making that up. Yeah. Time was running out, but it's hard to say that they could have done anything. 4 games over 500, but or 3 games over 500, but there was still time, and they still had those head-to-head games, even though we're like, God, I'm looking at the stretch. Holy crap. How did I forget that the White Sox lost every game between September 20 and the 28th?
Yes.
God. Well, this is why I don't need therapy. I managed to black this stuff out. This is awesome. Okay. Anybody else think, okay, the White Sox are creeping back. They're still hanging around. Cleveland has, I think this came up a week ago. We're talking about how I think Allie brought out that, Cleveland hadn't really distinguished itself. They were actually slumping. So the White Sox were allowed to hang around, even though this is a 500 team. And this Oakland series is maybe the last time we have a feeling to say, okay, wait, the right things click together, something can happen. Of course, the games against Colorado, I think Jordan referred to last week as well. We're right around the corner. So ugly things were still about to happen, but the White Sox still had, I guess you could argue, their destiny in their own hands. And maybe that's a little bit of what I can throw into what Tommy's saying here is too. There was maybe not hope, but there was still possibility. They were not eliminated in our hearts, in our heads, even though we're all sort of like, and I don't think it's going to happen. Maybe we're still believing that Cairo's boys don't quit or something. I mean, there was enough still to perhaps believe in. Anybody like Tommy recognizing that Oakland series and doing pretty well against the team they needed to really try to bury at least 2 out of 3 as being a potential turning point?
Well, didn't they get their asses kicked in the 3rd game? So it was like, I think I was on coverage for the last 2 of these games. And it was like, it went from like a 10-1 win that was really great.
Right.
And I'm like, man, we're doing really good, to like an 8-0 loss. I was like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yep.
Cairo's boys don't quit, but they sure do lose 8-0.
Yeah, losing 10-2 win, 10-3 loss, and you're right. They get it handed to them, and you're forced to walk away saying, okay, it's good that we won 3 out of 4, but they needed 4. They needed 4 out of 4 at that point. Against Oakland, you really need the 4 out of 4, and you certainly can't lose the finale by 7 runs. So, yeah, Tommy, you sort of took us right to the edge of the cliff. We peered over, and we saw that was coming. Again, if anyone hasn't really figured out how this ended, the last 2 weeks of the season,
it's not good.
Stop here. Stop. Yeah, the spoiler is it's not good, but we can't tell you how. Well, I guess I already did. I talked about losing 600 games in a row against division opponents. That's a White Sox family tradition. They always sort of choke in the final month.
Swept by Detroit. I mean, it's not just losing against like even Cleveland or good teams. They got swept by like the bad Detroit Tiger team that had nothing to play for.
It's interesting. It didn't come up a week ago in the worst games, one of those Detroit games, because of course everything's lost by then, and we all have given up hope. But those games were so offensive. They were totally believable, but so offensive. This is a team that's absolutely in free fall. They're fighting for last place, and the White Sox can't muster. They're at home. They can't muster a win against Detroit. On the hill, I understand, demoralized after getting swept in the must sweep against Cleveland, but then you lose all 3, and then you take that right into Minnesota and you keep losing.
They weren't even close games. So yeah, it was bad.
I wonder what Miguel Cairo said in his White Sox manager interview about, I mean, I'm assuming Rick Hahn was astute enough to ask about it. He probably wasn't actually, but I wonder what you say about that. Hey, Miguel, we noticed between the 20th and the 28th crucial must-win games, our team lost every one. What happened? I thought you told them just to go out and have fun.
That pre-recorded speech only worked so many times before the tape ran out.
Our final game in this story, although we are recording this a little bit in advance, so there may be still some games trickling. I believe we have 10 all told at moment of recording. Is Trooper Galactus's cynical game, his favorite game being the blowout loss against Minnesota that just mercifully ended the season. Haven't read his write-up, but I'm assuming he's just that one's probably full of snark and criticism, as it should be, because the White Sox couldn't even manage a sweep against a team that had clearly quit somewhere 3 months earlier. And ending the season appropriately. Could not be a team above 500. Hey, we're talking about good games, but as long as we're ending on this horrible note, because you really can't escape the horror. And believe me, I hope nobody's still listening who didn't figure out how this ride ends because you listened too long. What was the worst case scenario going into the season? What do you think the worst the White Sox could have been? We always put, every year now we're saying predict, and we got 99 wins. I think we got 91 wins. I think that was the range this year. We always ask how many wins you think the White Sox. We never ask what's the worst case scenario. Is 81 worse than you thought the White Sox could possibly be this year?
Yes.
100% yes. I
Okay.
had 81 wins was not even in my. I'm 89. I thought maybe the
Yeah.
division could be taken with 89.
Mhm.
81, not a chance.
I wouldn't have expected it, but like 20 games in, I wouldn't have been surprised.
Okay.
But like I would have guessed like lowest end, maybe 87.
Mhm.
81 seems 500 teams seemed unlikely.
Right. Well, I remember. Go ahead.
A first round, another year of first round exit from the playoffs, like was my worst case
It was
scenario.
like the basement. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because like the goal was to build off of a 93 win first round exit from the previous season, right? So like if you do the same again, that's your worst case scenario, and they did even worse than that. So
Yeah, really, running in place should be the worst, especially when you're ascendant. You've got a young team, the contention window, you poured all this money into the team. Yes, you would think that spinning your wheels would be worst case scenario. And Joe, I remember in podcasts, almost week to week, we'd always be like, okay, let's reassess. Let's see what's going on. I think Crystal went from like 99 win prediction to 47 win. She was so frustrated at some point. But I remember Joe, it was always like, okay, what are we projecting? And I mean, I think we really had to work all of us down, I think. Well, Crystal accepted, I suppose. But, like, I remember Joe's like, okay, now I'm seeing like 87 wins. I mean, it was hard to even acknowledge the likelihood of like an 85 win season until it was right upon us or right on our doorstep. So, I mean, it was not denial. It's just, you're looking at the division, you're looking at a team that should kick in at some point. It's just like, no, this can't happen. Yeah, 500. How could that have been on anybody's table? Worst case scenario, the emptiest glass possible. Couldn't think of a low 80s. Forget 81 wins and 500.
Yeah, that was one.
Yeah, after the Twins.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna comment on that. Yeah, I didn't want to overreact to any particular bad series, and I kind of wanted to be as steady as I could with that. And so I didn't have any like huge drops from one podcast to the next, but I was just kind of gradually coming to the realization like, yeah, okay, this is probably going to be a 500 or so season. Eventually we got there, but yeah, it took a bit.
I think the other thing too, though, is that like I didn't think they would be like an 81 win team, but there was that thought in the back of my mind of Han really didn't address any of the problems from last year. Most of the all the trade deadline acquisitions that he made were largely gone. And the only thing he seemed to be interested in was investing in bullpen arms that were either not healthy, unknown, or somewhere in between. And it's just like, as the season went on and you realized, hey, we don't really have a plan for Kopech. Hey, Joe Kelly's going to be like mostly dead for most of the season. It just more and more, it didn't add up. And it was like, this doesn't seem like a complete team. And I think that based on how things were evolving, they still underachieved, but 84 wins probably would have been a more realistic target if they had, a competent manager through most of the season.
And it made it even more aggravating. It's something that Allie spoke to in one of these many Soxivus podcasts, grievances, perhaps, I don't know, feats of strength, because she wanted to punch Rick Hahn in the face. And it's the whole idea of like, well, there's nothing we could do about it. And then still also with like a smirk. It's not like, I don't expect him to be like, pulling his hair out and weeping, but the idea that's like this, a smirk, like they're going to come around and there's nothing we can do, even though we've built to this. It made it worse. It made it sting worse. I mean, you have a setback of a season, fine, but then it's sort of like, well, we just got to see how it plays out. It's almost like Ozzy not playing guys a decade earlier because it's like, well, you put big money into guys, so I'm going to just keep running those guys out there, even though the entire fan base is screaming to change the lineup up. Now it's Han saying, hey, you know what? I mean, you chose this manager, so let's just see how it plays out. It's not what the guy running the team is supposed to be doing.
Well, but also like the two biggest acquisitions he made were veterans that fell into his lap. It was Elvis Andrews and Johnny Cueto. If you took those two guys out, this is like a 75 win team. So, I mean, he got incredibly lucky to even get to where he was. And this is the guy that's supposed to be the big brain around trades and signing free agents and finding guys. You had two players literally fall into your lap because you didn't want to sign a starting pitcher. You signed Vince Velasquez. You didn't want to get any real depth at infield until you had to. And it just that he just kind of lucked out.
Yeah, he is not good at his job at all. Like Rick Hahn is just bad. And like we had Kenny Williams before him. And it's like the problem with Kenny felt like he sometimes took too many shots at like trying to make something shake. The problem with Rick Hahn is that not only does he not take enough shots, but also every shot he takes is like a fucking stormtrooper where nothing gets hit at all. So it's just like we all know that he like Rick Hahn. If the White Sox were a competent organization, Rick Hahn would not be working for this team anymore. But they're not competent, and like most Chicago teams, they love the people that they've stuck with for decades. 7:30, we'll see what happens.
It's not just the sweater. Dante is getting hot. But you know, we've been through. I mean, we've trashed Rick Hahn in every podcast, haven't we? So we can bail on that or pause that for a second. Father Soxivus, I need to throw it back to you. It appears that around the corner is Soxivus Miracles. Can you explain what in the world's going on with that? Because you know it's just been a year and I've forgotten. What's happening next week?
Well, you know, we need to, everybody is feeling hopeful and optimistic because we have a shiny new manager that is apparently very attractive and his family's beautiful. And everybody's just like happy and feeling good. So let's continue on that front and wish that Rick Hahn somehow has some extra bullpen money in his back pocket. And he actually says, hey, I think I'll go spend it on a bat that can actually hit, that's actually in their prime. Let's see what happens. So name your miracle that will happen that will make us feel good about the 2023 White Sox.
With an eye toward the new manager.
Yeah.
Okay. It's probably shooting too low just to have the White Sox promotions department put together key party night at the ballpark. All right. Well, that's just referring to our Slack in internal discussions. They've been wild and woolly, and I'm sure they will continue to be. But who knows? Maybe devote
his
an entire
wife's name is Allie. Like his wife has my name. It's perfect.
All right. It's kismet.
There you
somehow
go.
The guy nobody thought we wanted now is essential and crucial to a successful 2023
season. He picked up some tabs at a restaurant. He's at schools. He's shaking hands. I mean, he's out there. You'd think he's running for mayor.
His rollout has been much better. I mean, much better and much different than Tony's. It was like, hey, Tony's back. And now this man is out here like paying for food and being, a human being instead of this weird Frankie ass robot.
Someone put on Twitter the other day, like a side-by-side comparison of the social media posts for Grifol and Tony La Russa, and it was literally one tweet for Tony La Russa, and it's probably over a dozen posts that they've already made for Pedro. So there's a very different tune being sung.
Well, it does sort of leave a bad taste when when your tweet has the wrong signature, so.
And the whole DUI thing is
sort of a bummer.
Tweet up about I think they're trying to keep it on the download.
Yeah. We're already optimistic and discussing miracles, and it's a week early. Next week is Soxivus Miracles. And if you thought we came up with some whoppers last year, believe me, I've ever done an 81 season. Not that you can ask for anything more than having Pedro Grifol be your manager. Okay, we will try our hardest to aim even higher and come up with our miracles for next week. That'll be the source of the podcast and the Soxivus feature. For now, I think we will wind this up. I will thank, in most cases, the double duty podcasters of Allie Wesel. Thank you for the bookends of Dylan Cease game, and I'm glad we got to end on the nicer one for you. Super Joe Resis, you came for the important one, a Cubs win. Ooh, come on. We all can celebrate that. I don't care if you don't care about Crosstown anymore. I still care about Crosstown because we're sort of in that place where championships seem very distant, so let's care about the Cubs game again. Melissa Sage, Bollenbach, very interesting twist on best game. This time around, you sort of took the hamster course there. I like it, but also very sign oriented, very message oriented in your couplet of games. Jordan Haas, get well, stay well. Don't need you on the injured list next year. And Dante Jones, I'm going to need you to wear a sweater every podcast. I'm liking the fire. So sweater vest essential. It's going to have to be crucial. First, we got to get Dante a sweater vest instead of the Pulp Fiction vest. And Father Soxivus, Tommy Barbee thought you missed the signal, but you caught it. Hey, I'm going to catch you for miracles in a week's time. Yes,
exactly.
Excellent. Thanks everybody for listening. Hang around for this. It's a fun little experiment. If you don't agree with our best and worst games, hey, listen. You're obligated to list yours in the comments. Those are the rules. You don't get to just complain and run. List your game, and then we realize, the mistake we made. Anyhow, thanks for hanging out with us for this middle season of Soxivus. We got miracles coming up, so it's just going to roll toward the holiday season, and we'll have a lot more fun still with Soxivus. Tommy Barbee's going to be here, so it's going to be fun. Take care, everybody. Stay safe. Stay off the COVID IL, and we will be back in another week. The Soxivus Miracles.